It's just too big of a burden, I feel, we put on children and adolescents to not be able to move within their own space, within their own society. And it actually causes a countercultural movement where adolescents don't even want to drive. They don't want to get a job. They don't want to be a part of society because you've delayed them too long, unfortunately. So my goal for my little children is to actually, I'm hoping to transform the suburb I'm in into a village over the next 10 years, because that was the whole premise of my book, is that you can take an already existing suburb and transform it into a village and put the power back into the hands of local people.
Welcome back to Cities in Motion. I'm Jacob. This is the podcast for anyone who wants cities built for people. Each week, we dig into the systems, design, and culture that shape urban life and explore how smarter transportation, better planning, and thoughtful policy can make our communities more livable. So, Diane, why don't you take 30 seconds to introduce yourself and tell me about your background and your new book?
Okay, my name is Diane, and I graduated from Brigham Young University to do professional acting. That was my major. And then in 2023 or 2022, I decided that I was going to take a break from that. I didn't feel it was quite my season yet and start a family. And then in 2023, I had my baby, and that's when I discovered urbanism. I was 3 months in deep, and I found a Jason Slaughter video, and my whole world just collided in one moment. And I realized that I was going to pursue urbanism because I felt like a lot of things that I had been bothered by made sense through built environment.
I think a lot of us can relate through discovering not just bikes. I personally found it through like City Nerd and a few others. But yeah, not just bikes is great. And your background in theater, I have a background in music education, so we're
That's
both
awesome.
we're both in the fine arts.
Yeah, I was gonna do music therapy my first year of
Oh,
college, but it didn't work out, thankfully. But
yeah.
I was trying to be more practical at first.
No, music therapy majors are great.
Very difficult.
Yeah. How did your background in theater help you out with storytelling in your book?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that urbanism, it's probably going to sound funny, but it kind of bores me. I'm not like City Nerd or Jason Slaughter, I'm not thinking about the dynamics of city building all the time, but that was to my advantage because I could talk about urbanism in a way that was more generally relatable. And so that was the angle I took my book. I was trying to weave a story of a village and what that would look like for Americans and how it would solve a lot of their quality of life problems and also give them power again, which I think they feel a little bit helpless right now. They see a lot of things that are wrong, but they have such a low grasp of their communities due to zoning and engineering that they just don't know what to do. And I feel like most people right now are talking a lot about it online, about how we should do something, we should, whatever the problem is, and they just don't know. They don't know what to do. So the village was like, this is the thing that you can grab onto. If you understand built environment, then you can take better political control, economic control. We can have better places for our families. The war on motherhood and feminism would be greatly eased through built environment. And there's just a lot of questions that people are searching for that just the suburbs they can't answer, and they never will.
Can you tell me more about the war on motherhood? Like you said, like how does suburbia affect being a mother or a parent?
Yeah, so this is one of my biggest takeaways was that I was watching a reel today that this woman, her husband was saying her toxic trait was that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mother, but she also wanted to work. But she also didn't want to work too much, just enough to contribute. But she also needed a break, but she also wanted to be her own person. And it was funny because everyone was like, yep, that's exactly right. But that is exactly right. historically, women were a part of society. Their children were a part of society. They weren't located to child-only spaces the way they are now, like parks and schools. We rarely see children in other places, and when we do, we feel stigmatized against them because they're not behaving a certain way because they're not used to being in society, or we just think that all spaces should be for adults, and that's just not historically accurate. There's nothing traditional about putting a woman behind a white picket fence and telling her to be a domestic slave and only only dedicate her entire time to her children. Women were in home economies, they worked next to their children, they were working on farms. Like, women have always been individuals, and the only difference that modern society provides for them now is that they have a little bit more leeway to pursue their own ambitions rather than the ambitions of the household as a whole, right? Can we survive? Now a woman can be like, "Well, I wanna be a nurse, and I wanna have a bakery, I want to do a daycare." These are things that she has more ability to choose, but what modern suburbia has taken from her is that she now cannot balance any of those things. She's either a working parent or a stay-at-home mom, and it's very difficult to find the balance between community, family, and career.
Yeah. As I am preparing to have my first kid, I am definitely cognizant of being, or my wife also being a taxi driver until
Yes, a taxi driver.
until they are dependent enough to have their own car, because that's the environment we are living in. But
Mhm,
if we are living in a well-developed, less car-dependent environment, they have the ability to get that independence when they're younger, and that puts less strain on the parents or who
exactly.
guardians, whoever's taking care of that child.
Yeah, I think it's a big mistake to talk about women without involving children
Mhm.
because they're basically tied at the hip.
Yeah.
And anytime that you can provide an environment for children to be able to explore, to autonomously move around, to get an education from the community itself, you take away a pressure and burden and time away from a mother. And so any environment that you can build that thinks about children first will then trickle onto every other aspect of the community, which mostly the burden of children mostly falls on women, in whether you're a working parent or not, it seems.
Mhm. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about walkability, density, and community design?
There's a lot of propaganda. There's lived experience and there's propaganda. The lived experience of density makes sense because we have separated density from amenity. So it used to be that if a person came into your village or your community, that they brought something with them. They were the baker, they were the doctor, they had something to contribute. There was the community was functioning with each other. And what the suburbs did is they separated people from amenities. So now it's not that you were going to your local bakery, now you were driving to Walmart. This sort of invisible entity, like the we don't really know who runs Walmart most of the time. And it's gotten even worse now because now we can just click a button and we don't know how the shirt got to us or who made the shirt, but it's there that day. So, what I wanted to do is break the misconception of density that density, when paired with people, is actually a perk, not something to be afraid of, because a lot of density comes from family. There's a bit of cognitive dissonance, I think, on the right leaning side of the aisle that they want lots of family, but they don't want you to move into their space. And they also are annoyed if you have family and it starts to overpopulate them because car density is extremely annoying. It's loud, it's dangerous, it comes with box stores. Anytime that you add density with car dependence, you now have to deal with everything else that comes with it. But when density is paired with beauty, when it's paired with walkability, when it's paired with function and amenity, then it's really, really wonderful because you can have courtyard homes, you can have duplexes, you can have village cores of small starter homes that all center around sort of a courtyard garden area. And those people can be your family and your friends. And it's not it's the burden of density becomes a lot less. And so again, and I'm not trying to like throw people in cities, which is why the book is called The Love Letter to Suburbia: How to Restore the American Village. I'm trying to find a balance where families can find spaces where there's density, there's amenity, there's convenience, but there's also a little bit of privacy and, they don't feel overcrowded because I do think that people are really afraid of that.
Mm.
So my message is just I'm trying to look for sort of the middle ground between these two areas, which you don't have right now.
Yeah. You remind me of this picture that I saw online where you brought up how cars are dangerous and people they have like a dozen kids standing behind an SUV or in front of the hood of a car and like the driver cannot see them at all. We're driving around these giant unnecessary 8 to 10 person Suburbans or trucks and it's unnecessary for the job that is actually needed.
Yeah, I think about that image a lot because we have, though, everything about our culture, the suburban culture is like bigger and better. And it's translated to our homes, it's translated to our cars, even though we're not getting much more out of them, even though they're bigger and better. But every time a truck comes down my street, I think of the image of 8 to 12 preschoolers sitting in front of that truck and the driver not seeing them until the
Hmm.
very last preschooler, and how scary that is for me as a mother. Like, even if we fixed everything, we fixed our streets so they were slimmer, we did a lot of traffic calming, we relocated home economies so that you could walk around and feel more comfortable, I still feel like we would have to start regulating cars again because they simply do not need to be that tall or that wide. They're not functionally better that way, and they're extraordinarily dangerous for everybody involved, whether you're a pedestrian or whether you're even driving them, because they get in easier accidents because of the weight distribution on them. So it's it's a mountain of problems, but yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. I mean, how do you start a conversation with someone who says, I need my truck. I need my giant Suburban. I live in the suburbs. I do this and this is my occupation. Like, how do you talk to someone like that?
Well, I told my stepfather to not buy his very large truck. It didn't go too well. He still bought it. For as of right now, I feel like that if for the individuals in my life, I just give a lot of grace. Further down the line, I would hope that this is actually just an education issue and that when people learn what car dependence is, because they don't even know what it is right now, it's never occurred to them, then we can start having these conversations because right now, when I say, please don't get a giant truck that might, hurt somebody down the line because it's so tall or too tall, it's just, they're not ready to hear that conversation. And again, I have to approach this whole village conversation with a lot of love because I feel like the culture itself it's both cold but also, like, people are wanting to get together and wanting to band up, but they just don't know how.
Yeah.
A and so anytime that I can show love first and say, "I understand where you're coming from," that's how I'm gonna do it. I don't want this to be ideological. I just need people to see that human scale design is better for families, just point blank, and I hope that in 20 to 30 years, as we start to move away from it, we will just think, "How could we ever?"
Hmm.
How could we have ever done it, you know?
Yeah.
How dumb was it? And that's the hope.
I've already brought this up in a few of my episodes and a few of my interviews, but like people love Disney World and Disneyland for a reason. Like they walk into the park and you just have to walk everywhere and they love it. It's a simulated urbanism, I suppose. People
Mhm.
love going to Europe because they don't have to drive a car. Have you witnessed, I guess, your children knowing their city or space a little bit better if they're not in a car?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I mean, I can just talk about myself personally because
Yeah,
my children are so very little.
yeah.
But I didn't know where anything was. Like, it didn't I was asking my mom the other day how she could possibly navigate the world without Google Maps, because those first years of adolescence, you are just dependent upon an adult to take you places, and I wasn't a part of that decision. I wasn't it was somebody else. It was put upon the shoulders of somebody else, so I didn't really know where anything was, and it was actually kind of frightening when I got my license to I luckily had Google Maps, but to juggle Google Maps and say, "Okay, now I have to know where everything is. I have to be an adult now all of a sudden," and it's just too big of a burden, I feel we put on children and adolescents to not be able to move within their own space, within their own society. And it actually causes a countercultural movement where adolescents don't even wanna drive. They don't wanna get a job. They don't wanna be a part of society because you've delayed them too long, unfortunately. So, my goal for my little children is to actually I'm hoping to transform the suburb I'm in into a village over the next 10 years because that was the whole premise of my book is that you can take an already existing suburb and transform it into a village and put the power back into the hands of local people. And so that's my goal. And hopefully, as we go along, he will be very familiar with his neighborhood, the people around him, places that he can go safely, etc.
I just want to, yeah, I agree completely with your point. We're kind of delaying children, and then all of a sudden we have that responsibility. I mean, I don't remember. I just kind of accepted it. Like
Hmm.
I didn't. I was like, okay, we have to go to school. Let's get in the car. Okay, let's go to baseball practice. We got to get in the car.
Exactly.
Uh, but now that I'm growing up, I'm like, I really wish I could have like walked or biked, but in the environment that I was in, that would have been not great. Like my mom keeps telling me when we were younger, just to get to the bus stop, it was not that safe. So
Yeah.
it just kind of required us to be taxied around by our mom, and we didn't get to experience the community around us. What I mean, what are some of the steps you can take to turn your community or suburb into a village, like you said?
So there are three steps. It's the first step is mixed use, mixed house, mixed wealth. So you're tackling all of the housing problems with the suburbs. Mixed wealth, there should be all different kinds of houses in your neighborhood. You don't just need 2,000 square foot single family homes right next to each other. That itself should not dictate housing prices. It should be the community as a whole. Is the community as a whole nice to be in? Not am I immediately next to a duplex. And then mixed house, right? That also tackles the housing problem where you want to implement family centric zoning and sort of fight culturally to shift the housing market. Right now, I am looking into a home where we're trying to take a single family home and essentially turn it into a duplex. You can do all of that legally. The only illegal part of it is that you can't add an address. You can't add an actual door to these places, separate entry, but you can basically turn a single family home into a duplex or a triplex. You just kind of have to know the loopholes. So, anyways, I'm hoping to lighten the housing burden that way. I think that that will provide more housing and take power away from developers who are purposefully slowing down the market for the sake of gain. And then mixed use is that your neighborhood should have home economies. You should have bakeries and butcheries, daycares, schools, soap shops, just essential things should be in your neighborhood that you should be able to walk to. That's just a baseline requirement to have your neighborhood function. And then the second step is walkability. So now that you've actually changed the economic incentives and people are now walking to the people next to them, they're walking to their own butcheries and bakeries, then you say, okay, where are people walking now? And now you start tampering with the infrastructure. You want to add trails as much as you can. There are some roads that you may want to slim. People might deliberately, roads in front of their homes start pressuring their city councils to make roads slower through actual design. And then walkability, also just bikeability. Can you bike places as well? And then the third step is after you start creating these clusters of communities that are now not as reliant upon the commercial district where you have these box stores, now you can say, how can we connect these villages to each other? And that's where the last step is transportation, roads, trains, trams, streetcars, cars even. Are we providing infrastructure that we can pay back through taxes? And how can we connect these places as efficiently as possible?
Hmm.
So most of the time, I find that urbanists are attacking suburbanites and telling them that they shouldn't like their lifestyle, they shouldn't be driving. But a suburbanite doesn't have any clue that there's any other alternative. So to them, it just sounds like a contradiction to propaganda that they're more free because they have a car. And then they always try to fix transportation first. And we actually have to fix the paradigm first. You can't change or add upon transportation when you live in a car dependent system because it will always lose against the car. It will always be slower. It will always take 3 to 4 times as long. And it's just not built for anything else to share. It's like cutting down a rainforest and only putting in bamboo. We want a thriving ecosystem of walkability, housing types, businesses, and then finally transportation. And all of it should be kind of happening simultaneously, but this is the priority order of you need to get your community under control. You need to get your community functioning before you start thinking about spending millions of dollars on trains.
If I want to go from my house to my work, like you said, it's going to take 3 to 4 times as long. I first of all have to drive to this park and ride because I can't walk or bike to this park and ride, first of all. And then it's going to take me an hour and a half as opposed to maybe the 45 minutes it would take me to drive. Uh, and then, of course, getting back home. Environments like that, they haven't invested in transit. You're not encouraging anybody to take transit except for the people who are desperate and reliant on it because they don't have the transportation.
I think that's another thing is that it's a form of stigmatization.
Mm.
They punish you for not driving. And so it conglomerates into this attitude of, well, if I take public transportation or alternative transportation other than a car, if I'm even walking using my own two legs, then I'm poor. There's this feeling of like you're an outcast from society. Sometimes I'm just walking with my children and I have people offer to pick me up because the idea of me like walking is just so ridiculous. That's how much the infrastructure punishes you for not making you dependent upon a
Mhm.
corporation to give you a 2,000-pound vehicle to get around.
Yeah, I mean, cars make us actually more poor just by
Yeah.
operating it and registering it and putting gas in it every week. It's not just changing your finances, but your mental health, your physical health, the community around you.
Yeah, there are micro and macro costs to car-centric design. So the micro car costs are I have to buy the car. I have to buy insurance. I have to make sure that there's always gas in my car. I have to take care of any maintenance and any type of accident. If you get into an accident, you got to fix up your car, right? And then there's the macro costs, which are the taxes. We have basically created a Ponzi scheme where we are in so much debt from the infrastructure that we have created for cars that we literally cannot pay it. And the only way to pay it is to start tolling roads or taxing people. And even then, it's not enough. And cities, as Charles Marone talks about in his book, and strong towns start falling to pieces. And It's just interesting because this is the everybody's on the line. Like, some people are further down the line, like California, but, like, Utah's on the line, Florida's on the line. It all ends in the same place where cities are broke, there's a lot of homelessness, there's a separation between the I'm saying the wealthy and the low income, the middle class just becomes destroyed, and those are the huge macro costs of car-centric design, and when anyone asks me, "Well, why don't we do something more practical?" I say, "This is the only practical step forward, actually. We literally cannot pay for this. We must change course. We're riddling ourselves and our children with so much unpayable debt. It's obscene. Like, it is irresponsible that we have done this." And then, like you were saying, there's lifestyle problems. There's, if you get diabetes because you're constantly sitting in a car and, having a sedentary lifestyle and eating a lot of processed food, chiropractor visits, entertainment, kids are bored, so they're always in extracurriculars. I mean, car-centric design is incredibly expensive and makes you pay for almost everything to be involved in society because it's been taken away from you.
Hmm. If you're enjoying the show, leave a rating or a like. It's a small gesture that goes a long way in helping other urbanists find the show. Now back to the show. Yeah, I think you make a lot of really, really good points. And when your children, if you're continuing to live in this environment, you have to get your children cars too. And that's
Yeah.
more finance. That's 2.5 times the finances per family: insurance, gas, registration, and they're they're inexperienced drivers, and it's dangerous on the roads and on the highways. And
Yeah, it's really scary as a parent to hand your kid the keys. I mean, I haven't had that experience yet, but I wasn't a very safe driver. I think I've gotten into 8 or 9 fender benders.
I'm living in Austin right now, and within 6 months, I got in 3 wrecks. One was my fault, but the other two were not.
It's dangerous. And I always just think, is my husband gonna come home today? Because you really do take a risk driving such a dangerous vehicle. And I think the biggest problem is not necessarily that we're given these vehicles, it's that we don't really have a choice. I mean, I didn't even realize that I could walk to high school. And well, one of the reasons because there's no sidewalks. It was just a 50-mile-per-hour road that I could have been walking on the side of the dirt to get to my high school. So it didn't even occur to me, even though it was so close to walk. And I don't feel like I personally, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, have a ton of discipline when they're on the road. And this also is something that points to the design of our roads. It's meant to lull you into a false sense of security. They're literally designed that way so that you feel like you're safe when you're driving, but it's actually the opposite. We don't want everything out of our way to be cleared. What we do want is people, buildings, trees, art exhibits, anything that can pull society closer to a car is actually safer for pedestrians and cars, as counterintuitive as it seems. Any place where you want a car going 50 miles per hour or faster needs to be the way that we're currently designing them, where there's a lot more give. If you make a mistake, you're not going to completely collide and become dead. There should be a little bit more mercy when we're going those speeds, but speeds where there are humans, the road engineering is a huge part of this discussion, and they're just simply not thinking in the correct paradigm for families.
If you can't have your grandmother or your son or your daughter or your partner bike down this road, it's probably designed wrong.
Exactly. And
Uh,
again, this is just a thing of ignorance. Like, I don't think that people understand this issue whatsoever.
I did not think about it for the first 20 years of my life, probably.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just accepted it. And then I went to Vancouver on my honeymoon. I probably knew a little bit about urbanism and all that before I went to Vancouver, but we went to Vancouver, and just from the airport. We took the SkyTrain and then we took the bus to our Airbnb. And for the next 2 weeks, we just took the bus, walked around downtown, explored parks, explored museums, all while not driving a car. And it was really nice not having that stress and that
Yeah.
mental load, I guess, on in the back of my mind.
So is that how you discovered urbanism?
Mostly, but like I said before, City Nerd, I really enjoy his dry humor. And then there's not just bikes, Jason Slaughter. You can definitely tell the difference between my wife's like YouTube feed and then my YouTube feed is just like all like urbanism stuff.
I know, when it gets you, it gets you. You have to
Yeah.
you can't
Anyway,
forget it.
yeah. I mean, what you have all these ideas in your head and you're like, I'm just gonna put it on paper and write a book. When was that decision? What made you decide that? What made you go for it?
I went immediately to my local counselors and I was like, "Do you know about this problem?" And they're like, "We know, we know." And I'm like, "You do? You've known this whole time and you haven't solved it?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we're working on it." And I realized that they didn't know. They thought they knew. What they knew was that there is a faction of that wanted more walkability. That's what they knew. They're not necessarily educated on anything else. And so they are trying to appease this small niche group in the state and in their cities, but not seriously. And I decided that I was going to be an advocate, but every time we went to go do something, people came out of their caves and were very, very upset. Like, we couldn't get projects done, and I had seen that not just Bike Walk Provo had tried to do a couple of different projects to get things more walkable in the infrastructure, and people would always come and interrupt them, not knowing anything about the project, but knowing that it was going to make it a little less convenient for your car. And so I decided that to change the law, I must change the culture. And I started my blog first, and I realized that that was simply not enough. And I went to my book a couple months later and finished it in a matter of weeks and then worked on it for the next year for editing and published it that very next year. So I if I didn't convince the people around me, if they weren't educated on this topic, if we didn't have a cohesive vision to work towards together, then I wasn't going to get literally anything done. So, I this book was for your NIMBY, your very aggressive car loving neighbor or family or friend, and to show them that car-centric design is they pretty much probably hate car-centric design is the conclusion. When they figure out what it is, most people don't really wanna support it after that. Yeah.
So that's interesting. It's for the people who actually disagree with you, not just the people who already you have convinced.
Yeah. And I would say it's for both, but it was written for the people that I knew absolutely didn't understand and would fight me. And then it's for people that already know. One, to help give them the language to bridge the gap of communication between these two groups because I feel like urbanists are generally just very angry. And I understand you go through the stages of grief. I understand this, but if they want to see change, there is a framing and a sort of marketing these ideas to people that is more successful than others. And family is a big part of that. If you can frame it in any way where you're talking about women, children, fathers, grandparents, then that should be your angle. And I've just found that if you're talking about it like a village, if you kind of leave out technical or urban lingo like walkability, what is it, road diets, car dependent, that they're much more likely to understand. They're much less likely to become defensive because the conversation is now around a type of society, not a lack of cars. And so, yeah, it was for both groups. And it, to just have the vision. Like, what are we all working towards? That was something I needed urbanists to also jump on board with so that we're not going in weird directions and not getting anything done.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I usually like to ask my guest this at the end of the episode. And since you're an author, feel free to talk about yourself if you'd like. But what are some books that you have read recently or in the past that you would recommend people take a look at?
Okay, so there's a book that oh my goodness. I hope I get this title right. I'm reading it right now, and I believe it's called If You Want to Win, You've Got to Fight.
Yes, I heard about that on Active Towns. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. It's great.
Okay.
I mean, my goal was a lot of narration, was to create a visual to pull people from the culture to the environment, and so I don't know a ton about the actual logistics of changing laws or city planning. I just knew that it was possible and that problem solving could get that done, but what that book does is really give clear answers for what people can do in their own communities right now. One of the biggest things that I noticed that I took away, and I haven't finished it quite yet, but it was that changing just the culture of your own neighborhood will help get laws in front of people that they understand and are way less likely to fight. One of the examples that was so great was the bike bus of all the children in Hood River, Oregon. That allowed for them to make safer streets because now their own very own children were on those streets and doing a wonderful thing, getting
Good.
bright-eyed and exercising and going together, right? And so that brought it into the public view, and they were actually able to make change from that. So that's a book that I've been reading, and I'm really excited about it. It's giving me more language. Again, it's all about language. Do you have the words to describe what's going on, and what can you do about it?
Okay. That's gonna be on my TBR in the future also.
Mhm, yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy. Um,
You.
where can people find you online?
So I have an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and we have a website. I don't know what it's called right now. I think it's called The American Village that you can come. It's just the basics right now. It's a lot of podcasts that I've done, what we're currently working towards in my own county so that we can represent your own community hopefully and my book. So the book is there to just be able to give that language and give the epiphany. It solves a lot of modern problems, and so hopefully for my audience, especially my right-leaning audience, they'll feel a lot of epiphanies that it will make sense to them now, and they'll know what to do about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Over the coming weeks, we will continue to explore the people and projects that are putting our cities in motion. You can follow Cities in Motion on Instagram for behind the scenes content and updates for the show. I'm Jacob, and thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to keep your cities in motion.